Today we're going to discuss the essentials for starting an LLC in California, the steps you need to take to get your business up and running so you can start making money. I'm assuming you've already made the decision to create an LLC, so I won't talk about them in general or compare them with other forms of doing business. I've also done 2 videos on trusts versus LLCs for your real property, so if you want specific information there, then check out those videos. But to create your LLC, we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump in. I'm attorney Andrew Bethel, and thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please hit the like button. If you want to see more, please subscribe and ring the bell. Of course, leave a comment below if you have any questions or have a topic you want me to cover. Firstly, you have to pick a name for your business, which aside from a general presentation standpoint, is very important because without a name, you can't proceed with the next steps. Your business name needs to be unique enough that it is available for the California Secretary of State to approve it. You can check on the Secretary of State's website for existing names, which I recommend you do, to make sure the name you want hasn't been taken already. Additionally, if you think your business name is just 10 out of 10 excellent name, but you aren't ready to create the LLC yet, then you can pay the Secretary of State $10 to reserve the name for 60 calendar days, meaning you get to reserve the name without going through everything else if you aren't ready. Again, picking a name is important as it snowballs into everything else. Next is the actual creation of the LLC as a business entity in California by filing the Articles of Organization, which is different from Articles of Incorporation, which are for corporations. So be sure you're picking the right articles. Now, the articles are the legal documents that establish the LLC and are filed with the Secretary of State either online or by mail. Frankly, I would not bother with filing by mail, but the option is there if you want it. Filing online is easy. It's a 1-page form and a filing fee of $70. However, this is where the name comes in. Simply filing the articles does not reserve the name and mean the LLC is established. You need approval from the Secretary of State. That approval is typically given within 7 to 10 or 10 to 15 business days, depending on their current processing time, which you can also check on their website, since a human reviews the application. Only upon approval will the LLC be established with an establishing date of the day you initially filed the articles. However, you might be wondering if there was a way to expedite that process. Well, there is, and of course it costs a little extra, $350 to be precise. For $350, you can shorten that processing time to 24 hours. However, you can shorten it even more by paying either $500 or $750 for same-day processing. The Secretary of State is pretty good at processing articles though, so even if you are in a hurry, then the $350 is typically good enough for same or next day processing. We've even had them process articles within 5 minutes, only paying the base $350 expedite fee. Jumping back into the name of the LLC, what happens if you pick a name that is already in use or a name so close to an existing entity that the Secretary of State rejects it? Well, great question. In that case, the Secretary of State will contact you and give you 72 hours or 3 days to cure the situation and keep the same initial filing date. As in, you have 3 days to come up with a new name. If you let those 3 days lapse, then you have to begin again and you lose your filing fee. This raises the question of what if you paid the expedited fees but get a rejection due to an existing similar LLC name? You still get 3 days to come up with a new name, but when you resubmit with that new name, you're back on regular processing time unless you pay again for expedited processing. With all that said, just take a few minutes and make sure your desired LLC name isn't taken by using the Secretary of State's entity search feature. One last note about filing the articles. Once filed, you will need to file a statement of information within 90 days with the Secretary of State, but I'll discuss that in more detail when I discuss maintaining the LLC in good standing going forward. All right, you have the perfect name, you filed the articles, and you've received approval from the Secretary of State. You're ready to open up a bank account and get to business, right? Nope. To open a bank account, you need an EIN, Employer Identification Number, issued by the IRS. It's a number used to identify your business for tax purposes, essentially a social security number for the business. Fortunately, getting an EIN for your business is fairly easy, but it looks more complicated than it truly is. Simply search IRS EIN application, and the first link should be the IRS's website. Quick side note, you can pay someone else to do this for you, but don't. Unless you hire an attorney's office to do everything for you where it makes sense for them to do this too, then just do it yourself. It's simple, online form, takes all of 4 minutes, and you get your EIN right then and there as a PDF. After you find yourself on the IRS website, there will be a blue button that says Apply Online Now. Click that to begin the application. The IRS will ask for basic information. Just make sure you know your own social security number as the responsible person, it's your LLC, and that you make sure to check that this is for an LLC at the start of the process, as it's the same for other entities such as corporations, partnerships, estates, and irrevocable trusts. Also, even though it's an online form, it can only be accessed on Monday through Fridays from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time or 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Time for us in California. The IRS also closes the portal in the last couple days of the year for regular maintenance, so make sure not to try to grab an EIN on New Year's Eve. And when the site gives you that PDF, save it, print it, write it down, because once you close that window, or it times you out because you sat on the portal for too long, it's gone, and the only way to get the number again is to either call or fax the IRS, neither of which will be a fun or fast process. A note about the order of steps here. While you can technically get and acquire an EIN online prior to filing and receiving approval from the Articles of Organization, I would not suggest doing so. The EIN is assigned to the business name, and you as the applicant and responsible party can only acquire one EIN per day. You don't want to be in a situation where you somehow acquire an EIN for your desired business name, but as it turns out, it wasn't available from the Secretary of State. Then you're in a situation where you have a useless EIN and must either call or fax the IRS or apply for another EIN. The IRS won't run out of numbers and doesn't care about similar sounding names like the Secretary of State does. File your articles, get them approved, then get the EIN and open up your bank account. This brings us to the operating agreement. While not technically required by law in California, I would highly suggest you get one, especially if you're going into business with someone else. The operating agreement is going to operate like a corporation's bylaws. It's going to set forth the rules and procedures governing the operations of the LLC, and will often also include provisions on who is providing capital, how much is to be repaid, and what to do if either a member wants to sell their interests or what if a new member is going to be brought into the LLC. Due to this, and especially where there are members contributing capital at different rates, I highly recommend creating an operating agreement or having one drafted for you. It simply doesn't make sense to jump into a business venture, especially with others, yet not lay out the rules of the game and how everyone is going to operate going forward. You can always agree to make changes to these rules in the future, but not setting out these processes and procedures just leads to disorder later. Next, we have registering for state taxes. This is a step that's going to be dependent on what sort of business you're actually undertaking. Are you opening a store to sell your handmade artisan soap? Then you'll need to register for state taxes because you're going to be collecting sales taxes. If you're selling strictly digital goods or only provide services, then at least here in California, you don't need to collect sales taxes. However, there are other taxes you may have to register for as well, such as sales and use tax, employment tax, excise taxes, and more. To register, you simply complete the appropriate application forms online through the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration's website. Keep in mind, however, registering here does not take care of any local tax registration that might be required. In that case, check your county and city's website for some specific information. On top of registering for any local taxes that might be required, you'll need to make sure you're on top of any other requirements as well. For example, a business license or permit, which are often fairly local matters. Again, we're talking city or county level. Check their website for more information or contact their local business office if they have one. This brings us to the big step that's often overlooked, the maintenance of the LLC going forward. Your LLC needs to remain in good standing in order to continue to do business. Part of this is filing a statement of information, again with the Secretary of State. This keeps information like the business address current for the LLC and must be done every 2 years during a 6-month period based on the initial filing date of the Articles of Organization. So the month of filing or during the preceding 5 months. There is, of course, a $20 filing fee each time, but if you need to file prior to your 2-year period, then you can file for free, as the state wants to encourage us to keep our information current. Additionally, this is a point that irks people. Each year you need to pay $800 to the state no matter what activity is conducted in the business. It's a minimum business tax that's due until you cancel or close the LLC. So don't forget that an LLC costs money each year in order to simply maintain it. Those are the basic steps for creating an LLC in California. Of course, each state is going to have slightly different requirements, so check your local state laws for more details, but the steps will generally be the same. It's usually the fees that differ by state. Next, we're going to discuss tax classifications you can pick for LLCs. As an advantage of an LLC is that it allows you to pick how you want to be taxed. Then we'll discuss the personal liability protection that accompanies LLCs. Later, we'll discuss LLCs versus corporations, whether an LLC or S-Corp is better for single owners, what happens when that single owner dies, who's restricted from creating an LLC, as some partners or professionals must be incorporated, and much more. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Click here to learn about land trusts versus LLCs and when you should use one over the other, or watch this other video.